My name is Dr. Kara Graham Parker, and it is an honor to be asked to present at the 2025 International Congress for Qualitative Research and Theory Methodologies. I had the privilege of conducting my doctorate and research at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States. And as a practitioner and business owner of C. Parker Consulting, we do all things around organizational development, leadership development, and teams. So it seemed natural when I wanted to get a doctorate, a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, that I would focus on teams. And that's exactly what I did for my research. So, in front of you, and for the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you what I discovered from a research perspective when it comes to organizational development consultants' perceptions of trust building, goal clarification, and commitment. Let's first start with a little background about teams. So, certainly, probably in your world, you realize the importance of teams and that there's been a shift over the last several years from a hierarchical top down to more of a bottom up team structure. You know that modern organizations, and especially after COVID, we have to function in a very austere, unpredictable environment. And we must bring teams together around common goals in order to attain those business goals. But we also know that teams go and they transition from phase to phase in order to develop, in order to meet those goals. Organizational development consultants support those teams during the stages. And what I found is that there's a lot of research around teams, no shortage there, but they were all done from the lens of team leads or team members, and not through the lens of that third party expert, organizational development consultants. So first off, let me just share that the terminology is interchangeable across literature. You may see terms like team coach, organizational development professional, organizational development practitioner, and facilitator. They all have very similar roles, and that's what I wanted from them, their perspective around team development. So let's talk about those roles of that organizational development consultant for just a moment. Number one, they analyze organizations as a full system and then take those down into the teams. They provide advice, guidance, analysis, and sometimes, yes, even interventions when it comes to teams. They support that team development through coaching. One of the big areas that they must establish is trust. And they help teams meet their goals from a clarity and accountability perspective. So, the problem statement that evolved from my literature is that it is not known how organizational development consultants describe their experience with trust building, goal clarity, and commitment during team development to achieve the team's goals. The theoretical foundation that I used was rooted in a couple of different models. Number one, four considerations of business models. These probably are not new to you if you are embedded in organizations. We plan, we develop, we implement, and we take the action to improve. We also explored five dysfunctions of a team, wisdom of teams, and when teams work best. And I would say, tried and true, this is rooted in Dr. Bruce Tuckman's 1965 model of team development: forming, storming, norming, and performing. The final theoretical foundation that I used throughout my research is from the Drexler-Sibbet model. This model correlates the stages of team development to true business team model criteria. I found that it was most comprehensive of the models that I had explored, and it focuses on leadership traits. Or, excuse me, this model does not focus so much on leadership traits, which the other models did, and that was a bit out of scope for my research and studies. What I liked about this model and what I found from the research is that it evaluates teams based on clarity of roles, relationships, and processes. And that's where I wanted to focus. particularly around the trust, goal attainment, and team commitment when you look at how this model builds systematically. The research methodology and design that I chose was qualitative and descriptive. So first off, I wanted to hear about the experience of the participants. And remember, my participants were organizational development consultants. There were two forms of data that I pulled from. I did interviews and I did focus groups. This allowed me to explore the themes and evaluate it from that theoretical framework that I just shared. I liked it because it was most appropriate in this case for using the words and the experiences of those participants, which led me to the research design of descriptive, that rich data set by asking organizational development consultants to describe their frequent team experience. Robust data was definitely collected. I had a couple of research questions as I went into this. So the first one is, how do organizational development consultants describe their experience with achieving team goals during the process of team development? And the second research question, how do organizational development consultants describe their experience with trust building, goal clarification, and commitment during the team development? I mentioned around my participants, and that population was the organizational development consultants in the United States. Purposive sampling, the sample was the organizational development consultant, and that was also considered the unit of analysis. I'll give you a sample profile of what those organizational development specialist consultants had. Number one, they supported team development activities in the US. They held at least a master's degree or an equivalent degree. They've practiced in the field for at least 5 years. And the average tenure of my interview participants was 20.5 years. My focus group participants were 30.5 years. They had supported at least 2 team development activities yearly over the course of the last 3 years, and they did not live in California. So from a data collection instrument, when we talk about the qualitative descriptive, the investigator, that was me, collected all data following an interview and focus group script. That script was also reviewed by an expert of 3 scholars. That was a wonderful panel that provided great insight. The procedures that I followed for the data collection. IRB, GCU permissions were followed from my institution. I also used the snowball sampling. Hey, who else do you know that would fit this criteria? Consent forms were signed, and also interviews and focus groups were recorded and transcribed using Zoom Pro. I also did research reflexivity, within 15 minutes of the interviews and focus group, meaning that after the interviews and focus groups, I took a few moments to center myself and I did a mind map after each one of those events to really do my own reflection too. And data was stored, password protected in my MS SharePoint site. The data analysis and the procedures, each of the interviews and the focus groups were coded and categorized separately as themes emerged across the data sets. I used Braun and Clarke 6-step data analysis. Step 1, become familiar with the data. Step 2, generate initial codes. I chose to use in vivo, RQ, and theme. Number 3, searching for themes and then reviewing the themes, defining the themes, and finally, the fun part, writing up the report. I chose to use Saldana's coding, and I was able to take a class in his studies, which was very, very helpful in his methodology. The trustworthiness section, I'll say, from this was expanded to include number 1, credibility, transferability, dependability, and then an audit trail. And you can see here in front of you around how the data analysis was thematically coded back to the Drexler-Sibbet model of that theoretical foundation. The transferability, that was the perception of study sample, can be expanded to study a population based on those characteristics of those organizational development consultants. And I suggested how findings support future research opportunities. Using the in vivo coding and member checking, the study conclusions are based on the data, not my personal experiences, which was important because I had a personal practitioner lens and I did not want that clouding my research. Finally, the audit trail includes transcripts, process notes, final reports, coding, the coding manual, and that mind map journal that I mentioned. I wanted to share with you a little bit from my code book. So you can see here on the left-hand side some of the questions, just a snapshot of a couple of the questions that I asked. When did you begin facilitating team development experiences? As a consultant, when you work with teams, what type of model do you usually use? Also wanted to know if they were familiar with the Drexler-Sibbet Team Development Model. You'll see exactly what those participants' words were. And again, if you recall, that was transcribed directly out of Zoom Pro. And then I got into the coding. I coded it back to the research question and then got into a topic. Here is a pull out from my sample analysis where you have themes and sub-themes, a description. I thought it was really important, and you'll see that in my findings around providing quotes directly from those organizational development consultants from that population and the categories, and then you can see how the codes start to come together as well. So let's get into the results that I found. This was the first research question. How do organizational development consultants describe their experience with achieving team goals during the process of team development? Well, first off, on the right-hand side, you'll see a lot of those quotes that came directly out of the language that they used. So what I found is, number one, goal attainment is an iterative process that requires incremental steps as an answer to this first research question. It's an iterative process around setting micro goals, adapting, and that team reflection. Also, I discovered that strategic pauses through team coaching, assessments, and using team development models were very important. The second result from that first research question is that team reputation influences team members' commitment. You'll see again on the right-hand side of the slide that those are direct quotes from those consultants because they talked about that reputation, that it leads to pride and esteem. It also, we talked about interventions and sometimes when that is necessary to come in and do a mediation, and that it helps the team lead keep perspective. Let's move to the research question number 2. How do organizational development consultants describe their experience with trust building, goal clarification, and commitment during team development? Well, one of the first areas that emerged in the research is the pathway to trust begins with emotional intelligence. Because you're able to appreciate perspectives, achieve diversity of thought, resolve issues effectively, and absolutely that trust piece around commitment and overcoming disruptions. I really liked how participant number 2 on the right-hand side described it very succinctly. It's the leader's job, the team leader's job, to catch the scent. It kind of means read the room, understand what's happening from an emotional intelligence perspective. And I felt that quote very small, but very mighty. The second answer to that research question that emerged is alignment between team members' personal goals and team goals was very important. Again, you can see on the right-hand side, one of the focus group members said teams need the right people on the right bus in the right seat. And that really speaks to the the right role piece around commitment, embracing individual differences, and that personal empowerment and responsibility. The third answer that emerged from research question number 2 is that organizational structure must support the team lead and the team. that processes set clear boundaries around tasking, and that leaders connect through positive leader-member exchange, and that the organizational structure supports a team at large. Team norms clarify roles and communication. This is where standards are verbalized from the beginning. So it minimizes team disruption, and there's open knowledge and information sharing. There's role clarification from the beginning, which all leads then to accountability, commitment, and that progress towards the goal. I liked how participant number 3 in the interviews talked about that behavior takes practice. Team behavior takes practice individually before you can hope to be effective at it on the team. Let's talk about the practical implications. I found this exciting because of the field that I am in. So, the importance I found in the research as it came to me is being intentional and taking iterative steps when standing up a team and going through the stages of team development. The team and team lead coaching, very important to use that as a diagnostic tool and to understand the structure of the organization. And finally, additional research areas would be to explore different types of teams. Explore the 4 other stages of team development as listed on the Drexler-Sibbet model. And also, we could explore the perspective of team leads as it relates directly into this research study. I think the potential practical application continued is the study team formation, expanding the research to different populations and then compare and contrast it to the current study. So back on the former slide, I talked about maybe having team leads that could go through this sort of a study and then compare it to the organizational development consultants study and what the findings were there for this. Creating a field guide for practitioners in the field of organizational development and using the study from it. And also select just one phase of team development and engage in a qualitative case study. So, in summary, team development is an iterative and intentional process grounded in trust and focused on clarification. Trust leads to goal clarification and commitment. Team development is iterative in the process of setting goals, evaluating, and reflecting, and cyclical in doing that again repeatedly. And clarification of goals, roles, and structure is so important for a team to be set up for success. I would love to connect with you. So here is my page with all the information that you can find me from my company, C. Parker Consulting, my LinkedIn, Facebook, and various different ways to connect with me through social media. I would love to continue this dialogue, whether it be from the content itself, from team dynamics and team phases and development, or whether it be from the PhD research side of this, from the qualitative descriptive study. The following pages are my key references. We'll slowly scroll through these for you to take a look at. Your excellent references as I embarked upon my research journey. I thank you very much for this opportunity to be able to share my research with you along with my research experience, and I wish you all the best.